Again, good evening, everyone. My name is Thomas Huang. I'm co-founder and career mentor at H Academy. Super excited today to have Frances here from Bowtie, who will be sharing her knowledge around engineering, front-end development. So quick intro, H Academy is about empowering everyone with knowledge and skills. As part of this, we work with companies and their talented engineers to share their knowledge, such as Frances. So Frances is a talented engineer. This is her first time to share her knowledge, so please be kind. We hope we can give you a taste for coding and that you learned something new today. She's always happy to answer any questions you have. So feel free to put in your questions in the Q&A box below, and we'll get to that towards the end of the section. We also run part-time and full-time courses with our experienced instructors who have real-world experiences and experience instructing. So I can share a link about that if you're interested. We have a free demo workshop by the instructor for the full-time coding course tomorrow as well. And I think that's pretty much it for the announcements. Super excited to learn some front end myself. So with that, I think we can begin. All right, Frances, over to you.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, so hi, my name is Frances, and today I'm gonna be sharing introduction to front-end development with all of you, and I hope you'll get something out of it today. So a little bit about myself. So I'm currently a senior software engineer at Bowtie Life Insurance, and actually, my background is not in software engineering. So I study aeronautical engineering. And then after a certain time in the industry, I kind of I'm so fascinated about the web technologies. And so I decided to quit my job and then to actually learn more about it. So the way I learned was that I joined a boot camp, a 3-month full-time boot camp at a place called General Assembly. And then that transformed me into a software developer. And thereafter, I started my career in Tokyo, in Singapore, and then I came back to Hong Kong to join Bowtie. So a bit about Bowtie. So we're the first virtual insurer in Hong Kong. And we're located in Wan Chai. So if you're nearby, you can stop by our new cafe. We have a new cafe called Bowl Coffee. So the plan for today is that we're gonna learn a bit about what is software development, and we'll learn the basics, and at the end we'll have a hands-on section that you will make and deploy something. And then you can have a URL of your application that you can share to your friend. But before that, I want to ask all of you to go to this website. Okay. I'm just gonna share the So if you can go to this page to sign up. So what is Glitch? So Glitch is a platform that allows you to build a website like really quickly with a structure, and then at the end it helps you to deploy it as well. So whatever ways you want to sign up, I recommend you doing by the email magic link. You should be receiving an email with a sign-in link. So something like this in your email. So if you're ready, then we can go on to start learning the basics. But you can do it like while you're listening as well. And also let me know if there's any problem with it as well. So what is software development? So software development, like according to IBM, is like a process creating, designing, and deploying and supporting the software. It's a very vague statement, but this is basically how we do it. Inside the spectrum, like if there is someone tells you that like I'm a software engineer, what do they actually do? So inside this spectrum, there are quite a lot of roles that you can be, even if you're same software engineer. So you can be a front-end engineer. Like myself, I'm a front-end engineer at Bowtie. So I'm responsible to handle the user interface. We make features on the platform, and we make sure the features are compatible across browsers. And also there can be backend engineers. So backend engineers basically handles the business logics, how data are stored and produce APIs. So like, let's say if a customer wants to sign up at your platform, backend engineers need to handle like where the data goes, like how do they log in, that kind of stuff. And full stack engineer is engineers who can handle both front and backend work. So basically 2-in-1 package. And DevOps engineer is actually quite a relatively new role in this spectrum, but I think it's a very, very important role. So imagine I'm developing like a new feature in the website, and like I cannot be like snipping it every time and drag and drop it to somewhere in the web server and then let it run. It must be some more like automatic process to make sure the deployment is as smooth as possible, and that we can deliver like new features to our customer relatively quick. So there's also QA engineers. QA engineers like are responsible for testing the software, and security engineer are the ones who prevent like really bad things happen, like data breaching. A typical development cycle for software development is something like, let's say if in Bowtie we're releasing a new product, firstly, we need to evaluate what we need to do in order to achieve, which is to release the product. And we need to translate this requirement into software design specifications. So let's say like, how am I gonna store this piece of data in? How am I gonna accept this piece of data? And after all these are settled, so front end, back end, everybody knows what they're going to work on, then it's development time. And then during or after development time, usually it's during development time, we'll have to test if things work as expected, because like you cannot allow things to crash in production. And if everything's good, then we'll deploy it to production. And after that, like there will be bugs or feature requests, then we'll just start it over again. So for me, like day-to-day development environment, I usually start by local development. So I work everything on my computer. So I will not be going into a production server to like edit codes directly. And we'll just split tasks as small as possible so we can collaborate. And also, version control is extremely important in like any tech company, because like usually you're not working alone, and team environment, we will be working on the same feature, but then for different parts, because we need to like split the work to make sure the process is quicker. And version control like Git. So Git is a version control system that avoids us to go into like development conflicts, which is very important in software development. So my day-to-day, like I work with engineers a lot, and I work with designers as well. So for engineers, we need to code review each other's work. So to make sure that like the style, the logic is correct. And when we are working with designers, we usually they will give us a screen or a design or some interaction guide. So we'll have to work it out as piece of code. But most importantly, like I need to understand like the business logic, as in like what insurance is doing. Okay, so introduction is over, and we'll just dive into the basics, which is HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. This is a trio of any like standard project. And can you see right here on the screen? Right here. So let's say if I need to create a website with a painting, on the painting there's a pink circle and there's an orange triangle. Usually in a project you have an HTML file, a script file. .js is an extension for JavaScript, and .css is a file for CSS. So this trio would combine to make a website that is interactive and be able to allow the user to interact with the functions that you created. And it's a very basic setup right here. So everything is like on the side. So I'm just gonna talk a bit over like what is a standard HTML file. So in an HTML file, you have a declaration of that tells the browser, okay, this is a HTML file, which is doc type HTML. And then you'll have an HTML tag over here. You have a HTML tag over here that wraps your whole file. Because like for HTML to be able to be understood by the browser, it needs to have an open and end tag. And then basically the file is split into two parts. So the first part is like you have a head, which wraps your metadata, your title, and you can tell the browser like, do you want to import any CSS files, or you can declare any extra styles. And also you can import like scripting files like JavaScript, or you can alternatively by adding a script tag. And then the rest, you have a body tag right over here, which contains all the content that you want your user to be able to see. So for HTML, what is HTML? HTML provides the structure of a web page. And so the most common elements that you will be using in an HTML file. Okay, sorry. Is div. So div is like a box, because everything in HTML behaves like a box. So let's say if you have a text called here, like my painting, for the browser, to the browser is a box. So it has, what is a box? A box has border, has padding, and has margins. And another very common element is button. Button is basically a button right here. So this move circle to the top left is a button. And of course, like you have hyperlinks or text. And what's special about these elements is that there are a certain set of global attributes that you can apply to them. So let's say for ID, so you can specify the ID of an element as a unique identifier, or you can add a class. A class is used for declaring elements that you think are similar of the same class. And you can also declare styles, inline styles, and a lot more that allows you to interact with. And for CSS, so this is a typical CSS structure right here. Oh, sorry. So you see, I have a canvas here that actually indicates this part, this box here, and I have it as a background white. So let's say if I want to change the background as yellow, basically I just need to change the CSS file, because I already targeted the canvas right here, which corresponds to this structure, div class of a canvas. So CSS allows you to select items, select elements on your page, so that you can change the style of it. And it comes with a selector and declaration. So this part, dot canvas is your selector, And these are the declaration pairs. Declaration pairs are a property plus value. So what I just demonstrated is background yellow, and you can add a lot more like border, let's say red. Then you'll have a red border around your box. It's very intuitive in a way. And then we go to JavaScript. So what allows us to interact with the elements on the page? So you see, like, I can click move circle to top right, scale triangle up, then it actually scale up and then scale down. So all these are paired actually with a function. So the function in browsers needs to be written in JavaScript so that the browser will be able to understand, okay, what's the instruction that I need to carry out when I click on a certain button. So right here, you can see I have an element called button, and then on click, move circle left. And then you see right here, inside my script tag, I have exactly the same function. So this to the browser is a function. Far move circle left. The first line is that we need to select the circle. We need to ask the browser, okay, I want to select the circle. So how is it able to look for the circle on the page? So remember, we just learned a bit about, sorry, I'll just drag a bit out. So remember, we just learned a bit about selector, CSS selector. How I select element can be by class. So in this case, dot something tells the browser to look for an element with a class circle. So look at here, we already have defined an element with a class circle. So in a way, this tells the browser, okay, my target is this pink circle. And I'll ask it to remove a class called top right. And what is top right? Top right is a class that I define in my CSS that tells the browser to have any elements with this class to place the element on top equals 0 and right 0. So that's why it's over here. So typically, if you're talking to a front-end engineer or like anybody in this web development front-end work, we often call this as manipulating the DOM, because everything you see on a page, on a web page, the browser interprets it as a DOM, DOM. DOM stands for document object model. And manipulating the DOM is sort of telling the browser how do you want to interact with the elements on your page. If I'm going too quick, then or you have any questions, you can just type in the chat box. So I hope I'm not going too fast, but so we introduced a little bit about like what sort of HTML, what sort of HTML elements that the browser would actually recognize. So let's say if I want to create an element called like Bowtie, and something like inside Bowtie, I want to show like, okay, Bowtie. So would it work? Actually, it does display on my page, but it's not as what I think like it should be, like a bow tie shape, nicely like in pink. Because how these text elements get agreed is for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, there are a committee, or you can call it work group. So they gather like once a year or like frequently, regularly, to decide, okay, we want to have these elements as the standard. So there's a standard, and the browser will have to keep up with it. And so that's why, like, I think maybe some of you have encountered before. You might often heard like Internet Explorer does not support this, does not support that, does not support this, because like sometimes browser, even they follow the same standard, they don't necessarily follow at the same pace. So some of the features might not be included in some release of your browser. So that's why sometimes like people recommend you to use Chrome and Firefox, because these are the browsers that often keep up with the standard very closely. And let's say if you want to check on whether or not like you want to use, let's say if you want to use a CSS feature that you're not sure whether or not Internet Explorer supports it, you can go to caniuse.com, which is very useful when you are checking on like whether or not a function is supported. So let's say for this is I want to check position sticky. So position sticky is like, you know, those like sticky app bar, when you scroll, then it just sticks there on top. So it's a specification of CSS. And as you see, like IE not supported, and Chrome, the latest version supports most of the version supports it. So this is a very useful matrix that you can check on before you dive into development of anything. If you care about people using Internet Explorer, you might actually have to reconsider, do you want to use this position sticky, because it's not going to be supported. So another thing that is very often used in my day-to-day work is like we need to debug what is actually happening on the page. Sorry. So let's say I actually want to see like what is this element. So we have tools in every browser called development tools. So how do you trigger it? Is like, let's say if you go to any website and then you right click, usually you see an option called inspect. So when you click on it, you'll be able to trigger some like unknown world in your browser, which have a few common tabs. So the first thing is elements. Like it allows you to kind of inspect what elements or what nodes are there on your page. And then also console. Console is very, very important to make sure for you to make sure that your codes are actually working. So let's say I want to make sure if my scripts are like running as I expected them to be. So I can do like console log hi or something. So like if it's running, I should be able to see if my scripts are running okay, then I should be able to see it like in my console. So it's very important for us to make sure that, okay, this is working. And you can actually print values. So let's say if I want to print like this scale triangle down function, like let's see what it will happen. So you see like it prints the function exactly as it is, as I define it. So it's very useful for us. Okay, so John is asking, what is my favorite web browser to use? Do you have any advice or tips for others who did not come from technical backgrounds. So the first question is, of course, my favorite browser, my day-to-day work browser is Chrome, because it provides a lot of updates in development tools like all the time. So it's very useful for the developers who works on front end aspect of an application. And some of my colleagues use, they love to use DuckDuckGo, which provides you with more privacy in your digital trace. And do I have any advice for anyone who did not come from technical background? I hope you're still following, and it's very interesting for me at first when I first started the journey in front-end development, is that like I inspect all the website all the time. So like if you find a very interesting website, like let's say, so this is a website that I'll share later on. So it's like, oh, this is very interactive CSS game. Whenever you click inspect, like you will be able to understand like how the HTML structure is, and you will be able to even see like what sort of network calls it's calling, or like what sort of files it's downloaded. And it's a lot of learning that you can dig in. But I'll share a little bit more about like what other things you can do without very strong background and technical side. But for now, we'll just start like a really quick hands-on session. Is anyone all registered on Glitch? If you have any difficulties, can you let me know on the chat? So if you're able to create an account in Glitch and sign in, you should be able to see something like this, like a dashboard on the page. And I want everybody to click on new project. And if you click on new project, then there's an option called Hello Web Page. And when you click on it, it will do some loading. So I'm just going to briefly talk about what we are going to build today. We are going to build a random quote website, which literally would display a very random quote on the page. And the result would be something like this. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, I went on. So the result will be something like this. You have a header, you have a quote, and then if you click on another please, then it will fetch another quote, and you can access it with this. But I'll just share the link here. This is the end result that we're gonna achieve. So for now, like we'll just go back to Glitch. Like if you successfully click open new project, you should be able to see this. On your left, you should be able to see your like a list of files, and this is called a README page that you can ignore for now. But we'll just click on the HTML, and let's say, so for if you can access this, you click on the show and you click on next to the code. So you will be able to see this, exactly this. And if you want to access, if you like after this class, you want to share this link to any of your friends, or you just want to keep it, then you can go to share. So you can see under project links, there's a live site. So this marble titles spawn nosaurus.glitch.me is a URL that you can always access your page. So what are we going to do with this page? From this hi there, I'm your cool new web page, we're gonna transform it to something like this. So it has three important elements in it. So firstly, you want to display a quote and author pair in a pleasant way. Like you don't want to show it in some like very native HTML style. And if you click on some buttons, you should be able to shuffle to another quote. And also it should be accessible with a web address. So for number 3, we already completed it. So we'll just dive into 1 and 2 right now. So we'll first construct the page structure. So on this page, we can see there's a random quote only, which is a header. And then you have a card that is wrapping the actual quote and author and the button. So we'll just quickly add that into our HTML structure. So firstly, we'll just remove everything inside body. So you'll see your page immediately goes blank. So firstly, we want to create the header. So what we just learned, header, you can represent it with h1. So h1 random quote only. So we get a header right here with like blue italic style, which we'll just fix a little bit later. So when you click on when you type h1, Glitch is very friendly, like user friendly, that it will just help you to add the end quote immediately, automatically. If you're using like any other text editor, like raw text editor, like this might not come with it, and it usually is why your HTML breaks, because you did not include a close tag for your element. So make sure that you have your end tag. So after we have our title, our header, we will just add a card. So everything in HTML, you can represent it with a div. So we'll just start with like div. Inside the card, we'll have a block quote. So block quote is actually a HTML element that is accepted. So you can type block quote and like say, okay, I am a quote. So you will see like, okay, you have a block quote element right here. And then we'll just add an author. And then at the end, we'll have a button. Just say like another one. Okay, so that's basically our structure. We finish it. We finished building our structure. If you have any difficulties, just let me know in the chat. We'll try to fix it if okay. If okay, then I'll just move on. So next we'll handle the layout and styling. So right now I just have like plain card, blog quote, author button on my page. And I don't want that. I want something like this. I want the card with dark blue background, rounded corners and stuff. So how are we able to, first, let's fix the H1 right here. So because it's utilizing an external style sheet, then we'll try to edit the style sheet directly. So it's on your right, just click on style.css. So you see like why is it blue and in italic? It's because like there is a style that targets H1 direct and exactly as that. So we'll just remove this. So it will become a black header. And let's just keep it like this. I think it looks okay. And what about the card? What about the card that we just defined? Like how are we able to target this div as opposed to this div? Maybe it's best that we add a class here. Like I'll just add a class called like card. And for the author, this div, I want to differentiate, and then I just want to name it to like author. So we have all this. So for sake of like just demonstrating without me like just going back and forth, then I'll just have a style tag over here on inside my head in the structure. So firstly, I want to target the class. So if anyone remembers like how do I target the card by class is by dot card. So usually it's something that I do every day. Like I do every day to make sure that I'm targeting exactly what I want. So I'll just put to see like background red to see if actually working. Okay, it's turning red. It turned red, so I think it's working. So I'll just remove it and I'll just put it as like let's say instead of dark blue, I want to put it as black. Okay. So instead of doing this hex code, you can just do black. And I want some rounded corners. For rounded corners, you want to add by like border radius. Let's say I want to have it as 8 pixel, which pixel is like px. So you see like it immediately gets rounded. And okay, I think for now we can deal with it. So for the block quote, oh, sorry. So in order for us to target the block quote, because block quote is already an element, right? So we can just do by block quote. And again, we want to make sure that we're targeting correctly. We'll try to do it like background red. Okay, it's targeting like correctly. So I want it to be in pink, like let's say in pink. Okay, I think it's changing, so I'll just revert the background. It's in pink, and I want the font size to be like larger. So font size, you can literally do this. Font size, and let's say I want to do it 24 pixel. Okay, I think the size is okay. And then next, we'll just target the author. So because we set author as a class, so we can also do by dot author. So for the author, we want it to be in white. So for the color to be in white, then we'll do color white. And it seems a bit weird because it's aligning to the left. And we can do this by text align right. So it will immediately goes to the right of my card because it's bounded by the card. And I think it's okay for the button. Sorry for the author. So we'll move on to the button. If you're targeting the button, because button here is just an element, then we can just do buttons. And we want it in white background maybe. And I want it to be slightly larger, maybe 18 pixel. And I want to take up the whole width. So you can have it width 100%. Okay, I think it's okay right now, but it's a bit different from the example here because like I'm sort of missing the padding over my card, right? Because like everything kind of like just touches the border of the card. So I'll just add back a bit of padding here, padding maybe 12 px. I guess okay. And another thing that is missing is like I don't have like open quote or closing quote for my quote because it does not come with block quote element. So another very useful selector, CSS selector is there's pseudo class. So for elements, I want to add an open quote before the block quote element, right? So you can literally do block quote before I want it to have something like a content of open quote. So you see the open quote is there before my block quote. So similarly, like after the block quote, we want to put a close quote after content. So you see we have a open quote and close quote before and after. And these are called like pseudo class for elements. That is very useful for you to add like stuff that is outside of the element. And also like for author, we want to do the same, like before the element, we want to just add something like maybe like a hyphen, yeah, like that. And I think for now we're okay. And maybe the buttons, we want to have it move a bit down. So I would just add margin top, maybe like 18 pixels. Okay, maybe it's okay right now. So lastly, like when I click on another one, please now, like nothing happened, right? Literally nothing happened. So because I didn't specify anything on this button, like any behavior. So the quickest way for you to add actions to elements is, let's say I want to add like on click, some things happen. So you can do on click. Let's say I want to like change quote. When you do that, nothing happens, right? So let's say if we are not going to use this external script, we just add another script tag right here. And we can define a function called change quote. So the syntax of a function is function, your name, and this parenthesis, this bracket. This bracket means that I don't have any parameters that I want to pass in. And let's say if I want to check if it's actually working, if I click on it, changing. So remember, there's a developer tools that we can check on the console, right? So we'll just activate it, and we'll just go to console. So there's a high because in this script, there's a console log high. But I want to check if this button is working as expected. So okay, it's okay because it's working okay because like it's logging, changing in the console. So we confirm this button triggers the function as I would like it to. So what are we trying to achieve here is that I want to change the content of block quote whenever I click another one place, right? So if you remember the painting example, when I click on like move circle to top right, first I need to target my circle, right? And then after targeting the circle, I can do changes to this element. So similarly, we will try to first target the quote element. So how do I do that? So let's say I need to define a variable. Variable in JavaScript is named var. var quote element equals. So how do you select it? Previously, we can do document query selector. If anyone remembers, like I'm trying to select an element called block quote, right? So I can just do that. And like, let's say if I want to confirm if this quote element is something that I'm trying to target. So I can console log quote element. So if it's working, I should be able to see something in my console, right? Okay, so this working because I'm able to select, like it's able to log the quote block quote element here. So the easiest way to do it to update the content of an element, which is like inside of your tag, is quote element dot inner HTML. HTML should be like all in capital size. Is I am a new quote. So if it's working, I should be able to see an updated code right here, right? So let's say let's try. Okay, it's returning a new quote, a new line, replacing like I am a quote here, and it's okay. So we'll do this exactly the same with the author. Let's say author element document query selector. So how do we select the author? Author is defined by class, right? Dot author. So we'll just do dot author. And again, we want to check if it's working. Author element console log. Okay, it's working because it's returning. And I'll change the author by new author. So how do I check if it's working? I'll just click on it. Okay, I think it's working. So this pretty much is the basic functionality that I want to introduce. But of course, like you're not gonna be returning a quote just by I'm a quote, because like a lot of times we want to change data on a page like dynamically. We want to get it from a database. We want to have it different every time. Like let's say for this case. So how do we do that? For this context, because I think we're running out of time, but I wanted to introduce a very commonly used API that you can use in your browser. It's called Fetch. So Fetch allows you to just fetch anything from a URL. So I have this quote API that would be able to return like a random quote for me. So this is the URL. So I'm just gonna type it here, like if anyone is interested to see. So this, accessing this will be able to give us some like codes which contains a quote. So for example, this is like, there is a little doubt. Sorry if it's too small. So the result of this is called a JSON, JSON, and it's a very common type that we use to communicate, to receive data from backend. So I'm just gonna demo really quickly right here, like how are we gonna do it? So I'm just gonna do fetch a URL, and this is called a promise in JavaScript. And I'm sure like if you're interested, you will learn a lot more about it. So I want to check like what's the response here. So again, I open my console and I want to see if it's working. It seems like it's not working. So firstly, I'm just gonna, sorry. Wait. So in theory, like you can fetch anything from a URL, which for us, I communicate with backend with this API a lot, and this is how you can. This is how we can have dynamic data in our application. Sorry. I'm just gonna switch to the done project right here to show you the code, the code of it, and then we'll just. So for this example, I have it at the script in my JavaScript file because it's more tidy. So here we'll just do a fetch a URL, and then I need to format it into a JSON. And after that, the data I get, I can just replace the quote inner HTML with this, which allows us to do the same thing besides like just changing it as this is another quote. So there's a lot of, I hope you're able to follow what I'm doing, I hope. If you have any question, just feel free to type. And I'm just gonna, I will share the slides later if you have more interest in learning more about the technologies behind. So I have a few slides about like how the web internet works, etc. So what we just learned is like we learned to use vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to edit, to make our web page. But in real life, in real world, we have a lot of frameworks or library that helps us to do things very efficiently. Sorry. And so I think maybe you have heard of it. There's some framework called React, Ember, and it's very commonly used in tech companies to develop the front end application. For us, we also use React, and there's a lot of interesting libraries out there that you can explore as well. So if you want to keep up, I suggest everybody to just search on Stack Overflow. I think you have heard of it before. So it's like a forum that you can ask technical questions, or you can read books, or you can go to meetups like this. You can go to workshop like this to kind of gather more information or know what is happening in the tech world. But most importantly, you can be like you can just be passionate about it, and you just get a lot of information from the internet. Yes, so that's it for my presentation today. I hope, yeah, it's a little bit quick, and I hope you can still follow it. And you can find me at my website, franxyz.com. Like, if you want to keep in touch or like ask me anything, just feel free to do so. And
maybe you can share the link.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes. So this is my website, then you can just check it out. So Bowtie is hiring. Sorry, my colleague Sarah is not here right now. So we're hiring in a lot of position right now. If you're interested, you can talk to us. And yes, that's it for me. Yes, thank you for like staying.
Thank you so much for the very informative presentation. And I was about to ask, actually, I heard Bowtie was hiring a few roles, so this is really great to see. I see we do have a few questions. Just one thing, we hope everyone enjoyed the workshop, and we'll share a Google form to get your feedback. If you could fill it out, that would be great. And once you fill out, you'll get a 1,000 HKD voucher for any part-time or full-time course, valid for 6 months. So I'll send that over. So I think now we can go over Q&A, and if Sarah's back, she can jump in anytime to talk over the courses. So I think we already entered the web browser one during the thing. Is Bowtie hiring? You're answering that right now. Good question. What tools do you recommend for further self-learning?
What tools do I recommend? Personally, I think if you have experience in like learning something on your own, like self-learn anything, like regardless of tech, some people can just learn everything from books. But I think it's quite more effective if you're learning from somebody with project-based, because basically you are creating something while you learn. So you're not learning a lot of like theories, like only theories, but you're not taking any application, like any practical experience with it. So for me, I would recommend like joining online classes, really. I do a lot. So right now I also take like online courses to kind of strengthen my knowledge in areas that I'm very interested in. And yeah.
Thank you. Why did you decide to come back to Hong Kong after living overseas?
So it's quite interesting. So when I was in Singapore, first year I was in Singapore, but the second year I just found like Singapore a bit too hot that I cannot really sustain, but I still really love what I do over there. So I asked like, can I do remote working? So when I do remote working, I originally wanted to go to somewhere cheaper, but then like Hong Kong home is obviously the cheapest. So I came back, and randomly I joined over after a year or so. Then I decided I want to join another company, and Bowtie is a very solid company in technology, in cooperation, like collaboration within tech team or other teams. So I'm quite happy that I came back.
Very interesting journey. How long did it take you to learn front end?
So as I just I mentioned like early in the presentation, I actually joined a boot camp. So it's like a 3 months full-time job. And sorry, full-time like course. So within that, it's like a full stack course that we learn about like web server, how to build our own web server as well as front end. But if you're just trying to pick up front end without any back end, I think it's like as we just gone through the whole experience, like you already learned like what's the fundamental of front end. But now if you're like actually you feel interested in it, I think it's very easy for you to find an area within the front end that you're most fascinated with. So for me, like I'm very fascinated with like computer graphics or like 3D animation stuff, and you can do a lot of things with browser only. So I personally dig deep into those areas. So right now you have your basics, like make sure that you have your basics like understood, and then you can just dive in to any aspects that you want to drill deeper in front end.
All right, thank you. And then I have one last question for myself. Do you have any closing remarks or tips or advice for people who may want to switch careers into development? I guess Sarah might have joined. Does she want to talk about the jobs real quick?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hi, I'm Sarah. I'm HR and in talent acquisition and development in Bowtie. So I think I'm coming in at the right moment.
Yes.
At the moment we are actually hiring across different teams from basically both in back office and from in engineering or something even related to sales. For our team, we definitely really value engineering or tech. So even for people who are kind of like very interested in tech, but not necessarily want to move away from their profession. For instance, if you're an accountant, we definitely welcome that. So if you have any interest in our company, you can just scan the QR code here, and then you can see our job board and just like apply directly through there. And then I post actively on LinkedIn as well. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or with Francis. And then we are always happy to give you to answer your question about our team or to introduce ourselves a little bit more.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Francis, do you want to go to the last question of the night?
Okay. So I think I just realized like I want to do what I love, and I want to be as creative as possible. So I tried the software engineering role, and I love it from the beginning, and I'm still really into it at this moment, because there are just so many things that you can just dive into, even if you're just a beginner right now. I'm sure if you're passionate enough, or you know what your passion is, software engineer is definitely a field that has a lot of imagination and a lot of things that you imagine can come true. So I recommend everyone, if you're trying to switch career, like software development is definitely a very good choice, because like every day you're learning for yourself while contributing for your company, or so you take so basically what you do is what you learn. So you definitely would learn a lot more if you go into this journey. So yeah, I recommend everybody to give it a chance.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for tuning in tonight. Thank you so much, Francis, Bowtie, and Sarah for making an appearance. We hope you all have a great evening and look forward to seeing all of you exploring your development interests. Have a good night. Thank you.